how many charges they bring against you." But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. Consider how you relate to Jesus Christ today. Does he have authority in your life? Does his teaching shape your daily living? Gracious God, grant us discernment that we may see as you see, not as the world sees. Amen.
Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. And the soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they dressed him in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and striking him in the face. Consider a time when you have been mocked for your identity, or perhaps a time when you have demeaned or belittled the identity of others. What pain did those actions cause? Is any healing still needed? Gracious God, grant us patience in times of suffering, that we may offer our lives as a sacrifice of praise. Amen.
When the chief priests and the police saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him." They cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate asked them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but the emperor." Then Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. Consider a time when your anger dictated your actions. Did you feel justified? Do you still? Gracious God, grant us strength that we may faithfully bear our crosses each day. Amen.
They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Consider an experience when someone supported you in a time of sorrow, grief, and pain. Did the presence of that person make a difference to you? Do you know someone who could use your support in this way? Gracious God, grant us willing spirits that we may be your instruments on earth. Amen.
A great number of people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For the days are surely coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" Consider a time when you have grieved for the state of the world and for future generations. Perhaps that time is even now. How do you acknowledge and process such grief? Gracious God, grant us gentle spirits that we may comfort those who mourn. Amen.
When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they cast lots to divide his clothing. Consider a time when you needed forgiveness. Did you ask for it? Was it offered? Consider a time when someone needed your forgiveness, whether it was asked for or not. Did you offer it? Gracious God, grant us merciful hearts that we may bring your reconciliation and forgiveness to all. Amen.
One of the criminals One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Consider a time when you were included in an experience or a group in a meaningful way. What did that feeling of welcome and belonging mean to you? Gracious God, grant us perseverance that we may never stop seeking you. Amen.
Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. Consider your relationship with friends who have become like family. What makes those relationships meaningful? Gracious God, grant us constancy that we may be willing to stand by those in need. Amen.
It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. Consider your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Can you feel the connection between your body and your spirit? Gracious God, grant us trust in you, that when our time on earth is ended, our spirits may come to you without delay. Amen.
When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked him for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn from the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Consider the death of a loved one. In what rituals do you find comfort in the midst of sorrow, hope in the midst of grief? Gracious God, grant us your compassion that we may always provide for those in need. Amen.
invite you to hold the nail in your hand if you are not yet doing so. At the conclusion of the prayer, the silence will be our blessing, our benediction, our dismissal. So I invite you to exit as quietly as possible as we go forth into the weekend, pondering the events of tonight, clinging to hope. And I do hope to see you on Sunday morning. And bring your nails with you. It just might be transformed. Dear Jesus, this tiny nail that sits comfortably in our hands stirs deep discomfort in our souls as we reflect upon your way to the cross. The anguish, betrayal, and condemnation that you experienced weigh heavily on our hearts. The ridicule, the brutality, and the unjust death that you suffered bring tears to our eyes. Your labored breathing, with which you offered grace and forgiveness to those who turned on you, brings our own breath into focus right now. With every exhale, may we dispel the taste of death. With every inhale, may we be filled with hope. Hope for the new life that can only come from the other side of the cross. Amen.